This is CBC Vancouver News.
How is it possible when a review board says this guy's dangerous, he shouldn't be released, that then he gets released and attacks people?
BC's Premier asks a former police chief to look into why a psychiatric patient deemed a significant threat was allowed out on a day pass and is now accused of stabbing 3 people. Concern in a Chilliwack neighborhood after a man and woman are killed. Another man has been arrested.
So I can't sleep.
More trees cut down, high-rises built more concrete.
And how unbearable did it get in some people's homes in Metro Vancouver? More on our summer-long heat project. Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. BC's Premier has tasked a former police chief to look into why a psychiatric patient accused of stabbing 3 people in Chinatown was allowed out in public. BC Review Board documents show Blair Donnelly was considered a significant threat to public safety. Leanne Young has our top story.
The core question of how a violent, psychotic individual was released into community to attack innocent people is the question that needs to be answered.
To answer just that, Premier David Eby announced this afternoon he's tapped Abbotsford's former police chief, Bob Rich, to look into the case of Blair Evan Donnelly and others like him who have been found not criminally responsible because of a mental disorder. On Sunday, the 64-year-old who's incarcerated at a psychiatric hospital was on an unescorted day pass when he allegedly stabbed 3 strangers in Chinatown. Donnelly has been held at the hospital since 2008 when he was convicted of murdering his 16-year-old daughter. In 2009, during another day pass, he stabbed someone else.
I had the opportunity to read the decision of the BC Review Board, which when I read it, seems to clearly conclude that this man was a significant risk, shouldn't be released.
The BC Review Board will not release the decision, but in documents obtained by Check News and shared with CBC, it shows the board last assessed Donnelly in April. The panel concluded he was, quote, a significant threat, that he needed significant supervision to prevent further harm to the public, and a psychiatrist testified he was at a high risk of relapse. Advocates for victims' rights say there needs to be more accountability from the board.
They do not put the public safety as the highest priority, which is what they should do. And unfortunately, we get results as we've seen this past weekend.
Teixeira advocates for Darcy Clark and her family. Her 3 kids were murdered by their father, Alan Schoenborn, in 2008. He was also found not criminally responsible because he was in psychosis. When he was granted unescorted overnight leaves, the family had concerns, and the board then said he still posed a significant threat.
Yet the BC Review Board just doesn't care. They hope to play experiments in our public.
In the case of Donnelly, a lack of staffing and supervision might be to blame, says this SFU criminologist.
Hello, Mr. Eby. His white-hot fury, he can figure out ways to allocate funds to this portion of the mental health system.
But still, Gordon says someone made a poor decision. The Provincial Health Agency has refused any interviews, only sending a statement which reads in part, many who are eligible for community access do not receive day passes for reasons including their illness. On the day of a scheduled outing, the patient is assessed to decide whether they are stable and well enough to visit the community. Premier Eby gave no timeline on the inquiry, only he wants results as soon as possible. Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
People who live in a mobile home park in Chilliwack are stunned after 2 people were killed Wednesday night. The RCMP says officers were called to the park on Chilliwack Lake Road just before 8 p.m. on Wednesday after someone reported hearing gunshots. Officers found a woman and man dead inside a home. They then arrested another man nearby. He's believed to be in his 80s. It's not clear what led to the killings, but the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team says police believe it stems from a dispute between neighbors. No charges have been laid yet. On Monday in BC, drug use will be banned in parks, playgrounds, and spaces used by children. The federal government announced the new restrictions will be in effect during the decriminalization pilot project in this province. More now from Mira Baines.
After widespread criticism from municipalities, the federal government introduced a restriction to the decriminalization pilot project in BC following a request from the province. Possession of illicit drugs is banned within 15 meters of any playground, spray park, or wading pool or skate park. Premier David Eby says police will have the authority to arrest and charge people for doing so.
What is likely to happen is that they will use this authority to say, not here, you're in the wrong place. This is a place for kids. This is a place where people need to feel safe, and it's not okay for you to be using hard drugs in this place.
Eby says his government will also introduce legislation to add more public areas where people can't use hard drugs.
We are working on and will be introducing a bill in the legislature that clarifies, expands, and adds some areas that are not included in the Health Canada decision that was released today.
The announcement comes as the Union of BC Municipalities is set to meet next week. This week, BC United says it doesn't support decriminalization, a switch for leader Kevin Falcon. Surrey South MLA with BC United and former RCMP officer Eleanor Sturco says the pilot should have included the restrictions when it began.
Now, in response to a lot of political pressure that they've been getting, they've made an amendment to the agreement that they have with the feds. But the reality is that the horse is already out of the barn.
Sturco says the key is to have more treatment services available. The new restriction goes into effect on Monday. Mira Baines, CBC News, Vancouver.
Meanwhile, North America's first legally supervised injection site is marking 20 years. Insight, which opened on the downtown east side, has served millions of drug users since. Joel Ballard has more on its legacy.
We did it, guys! We did it!
20 years ago, Insight opened its doors as North America's first legal supervised consumption site. Today, it continues to serve drug users, providing a safe way to inject under the watch of healthcare professionals.
Insight was important when it opened. It continues to be important in the current overdose crisis.
Over the last 2 decades, millions have visited. Many have been connected with detox and other healthcare services, and nearly 12,000 overdoses have been reversed.
I remember just coming here to use drugs is what I thought I was going to do. But it turned into something so much more and so much bigger.
Felicella says he visited Insight around 4,000 times over 10 years. One visit stands out in particular. He overdosed. When he regained consciousness, the nurse, shaken, told him she cared for him.
Burst into tears. And the many moments that led to that one moment where I just told her I don't want to do this anymore.
Felicella is more than a decade sober and now works as an advocate. Insight's journey hasn't been without its share of road bumps. The previous federal government attempted to withdraw its green light by removing its Health Canada exemption from prosecution under Canada's drug laws. The case was challenged, rising all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada.
The Supreme Court of Canada unanimously decided that it was unconstitutional to end Insight's exemption.
As the lawyer on the case, she says Insight paved the way for future supervised consumption sites.
Those legal cases helped this country and the international community to understand what harm reduction could do.
While it started as a way to prevent transmission from dirty needles, Insight has had to adapt. A new player entered the scene, fentanyl. Insight's data, crucial to understanding the deadly drug.
The Insight database is the most comprehensive database on overdoses in the world, and so we were able to basically show that your risk of overdosing in the current context is about 10 times what it was before fentanyl was introduced.
In the years ahead, this team says Insight will continue to adapt and continue to save lives. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
The federal Liberals wrapped up a caucus retreat today with news about housing. They're dropping a tax to encourage the building of more rental units.
Now, more and more Canadians are renting, and the cost of rent keeps going up. Canadians need more buildings intended for renters, not just condos that turn into Airbnbs that are sold to foreign buyers as financial assets. So, I'm pleased to announce that we are going to be removing the federal GST for the construction of new apartment buildings, and I'm encouraging all provinces to do the same.
That change would lower the cost of labor and materials for home builders. The Liberals who campaigned on that change in 2015 have been under more pressure to help provide more affordable housing. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre addressed the news today here in Vancouver.
Vancouver is the third most unaffordable housing market in the world when you compare median income to median house price. Worse than New York City, worse than London, worse than Paris, worse than Singapore, a tiny island with 2,000 times more people per square kilometer than Canada.
Poilievre claims Justin Trudeau has allowed inflationary measures and a mess of red tape to make it harder and more expensive to build housing. There is some back and forth over Vancouver City Council deciding to hike license fees for short-term rentals. That fee would rise from $109 to $1,000. Councillor Sarah Kirby-Young with the ABC Party says the increases are to offset property taxes and illegal suites.
People want us to keep property taxes reasonable, and they would prefer to see an increase in fees for specific services they use than to see higher increases in property taxes. So that's part of it. And then within the report, raising the short-term rental license fee more significantly than the other fees will allow additional resources to support enforcement activities.
But some Airbnb hosts are calling foul. This host has been running an Airbnb in his home for 5 years. He says he's disappointed in the license fee hike and claims it will make it harder for him to afford his home.
I don't feel that that's particularly fair. I feel that we're being lumped in with the professional Airbnb hosts that are buying investment properties and renting them out. And like I said, I'm not opposed to council taking action, but I think it needs to be done with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer.
Baldwin says he would prefer to keep his Airbnb rather than have long-term renters. The hike is part of several approved fee increases, along with hikes in Uber and dog license renewals. This week, CBC News has published the findings of a summer-long heat project where reporters measured the temperatures inside homes across this country. Almost 10 were in Metro Vancouver, many of which became unbearable for people in July and August. Our John Hernandez shows us how some of them fared and what some cities are doing to lower the temperature.
A hot August day forces Burnaby's Joan Chandran to get creative.
I've got the fan. I've got a little cooling machine. I keep the drapes closed in the morning to keep the heat and the sun out.
Air conditioning isn't compatible with her older building, which she says has gotten hotter over the years.
I think it's because of the trees, more trees cut down, high-rise is built more concrete, and then of course there's the climate change thing.
The senior, one of 10 participants in a CBC News heat investigation, where indoor temperatures were measured with sensors over the summer. Chandran's home got as hot as 32 degrees. For more than half of the days measured, the temperature never dropped below 26, a temperature widely considered to be dangerous when endured for extended periods of time. In total, 9 participants experienced entire days where the temperature never dropped below the threshold.
Mentally, yeah, it's like my brain starts to fog.
New Westminster senior Michael Reppenhagen also dealt with temperatures as high as 32.
I've resorted to taking melatonin, just one under the tongue, and it's really not doing much. I can't sleep.
It's got a nice overhang.
Participant Frey McRae moved away from this relatively new Westminster building over the summer, the heat playing a big role in his decision to leave.
It makes me question why that building was built without air conditioning built into it. I don't know if it was just the purpose of having it cheaply made, but it wasn't an old building.
The BC Coroner Service says it's investigating at least 3 heat-related deaths this summer, a drop in the bucket when compared to the 2021 heat dome where more than 600 people died. Still, officials say BC can expect similar heat events in the future, and as our data suggests, many homes are still ill-equipped to handle the heat.
And we had one of the highest rates of people dying in the heat dome.
In New Westminster, city staff are looking at bylaws for maximum temperatures in rental suites.
It doesn't mean that every unit has to have an air conditioner. It could be that it is a basement suite, or it is shading, or we have a heat pump in the building.
A move Vancouver City Council is also looking at.
It's an active file. It's something that we are increasingly alive to, and we're recognizing that it's
only continuing to get worse.
Still, BC's top doctor says there's pros and cons to such municipal legislation.
Sometimes it's not possible to retrofit buildings, or it would be very expensive and would mean the building would be out of commission, which means people wouldn't have a place to live.
BC's housing ministry plans to update the provincial building code with cooling requirements for new buildings among the proposed changes. Meanwhile, BC's health minister stands by the recent air conditioner program, said to deliver 8,000 units over 3 years to those in need.
I think the number of total requests is around 4,000 so far. So we've made real progress there. But I think we're going to have to adapt everything we do.
Government efforts that have yet to make a difference in these homes where residents have weathered another hot summer and wonder if and when they'll get some relief.
We as a country should better look after its people.
2 summers come and gone since 600 lives were lost. A change in season, the only reprieve for many of BC's most vulnerable. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
How a shortage of industrial land is costing Metro Vancouver thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. We'll tell you about that in a new report right after this. Hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. They may be criticized, but not all school portables are created equal. Justin McElroy spoke with those who build them.
Every year, more and more portables are needed across British Columbia for schools. But what do they look like, and how do they come together? Let's find out. This is Fort Modular. It's one of the biggest portable construction facilities in BC.
I would like to hire about 60 more people right now.
There's just that much demand?
Yeah.
These portables are constructed over the course of several weeks before they're shipped out across the province.
Everything's pre-framed in a panelized process at the back of the shop. You know, at the very early stages, you'll be framing, and then cranes come and assemble the walls, floor panels, and the ceiling panels. Electrical would come in, and then there's finishing and exterior siding and roofing. And as they make its way through the factory floor, each trade kind of puts in its 2 cents.
Portables are designed based on the needs of each school district. Some of the differences are just around geography. That says Kelowna. Is that heading to Kelowna?
These ones would be going to Kelowna, correct. The depth and width of the beam is structurally engineered, designed for the snow loads of each location. So Kelowna would have a lighter snow load than, I would say, Cowichan on Vancouver Island. Is obviously going to be a wet snow, heavier snow load.
But a lot of them are around how much school districts are willing or able to pay. What are some of the common variations or things where you go, all right, this one has things A, B, C versus D, E, F?
If a school district wanted a classroom that had 3 handicap washrooms, a high-end ventilation system, and all this stuff, it's doable and it can be done. It's just going to obviously be a more expensive build.
What's a general range for sort of a bare bones portable versus a high-end one?
Very loaded question.
That's what we do sometimes.
Yeah. So base lowest model possible, you're probably about 140K. A realistic average currently right now is plus or minus around 200,000 per classroom.
That's part of the reason why not all portables are created equal, but another issue is more generational.
Late 80s, mid 90s, the idea was to build the most economical solution for a temporary facility for about a year or two, and then it was going to find a new home or be moved off site, and that was the end of its life. Problem is, those ones are still in use now, having problems, but for no fault of what was ordered or built at the time.
So when you hear people dump on portables and say, this is a substandard experience for kids and why are we doing this so much, what goes through your mind?
I do understand the problem and the beef with them. And I mean, if I had a kid in school and they got put into a portable that was built in 1989 and, you know, minimal insulation and it's got poor ventilation and all these other issues, I see that's where the problem lies. Those were designed for a short-term temporary solution, and they're still being used. So, but that being said, anything new or built, there would be no problem. It's as good as anything.
But portable perception problems are out of their control. All they can do is send them out into the wild.
It is a hugely valuable commodity, and a new report says a shortage of industrial land is costing Metro Vancouver thousands of jobs and millions of dollars. As Yasmin Gandam shows us, it comes as more companies choose to invest in places like Calgary.
It's being called a crisis, with vacancy for industrial land at about 1% in Metro Vancouver. That's among the lowest in North America.
And there's just an extreme lack of supply for these users to locate here, and that's meant escalating costs for land and for leased product for industrial users, meaning they're looking in other regions. That's taking jobs and good productive uses for land out of the regional economy.
Over the past 4.5 years, the Greater Vancouver Board of Trade report estimates the region has lost more than 5.1 million square feet of space to Calgary alone. That's around 6,300 jobs gone. More industrial land is something the Port of Vancouver has been advocating for a while.
No, we were not surprised by this report. In fact, it's something that the Port Authority has long been advocating for at least the last 10 years and trying to highlight is the importance of preserving what industrial land remains in the region and finding ways to bring new industrial land to the market.
Businesses have been sounding the alarm for years. There's been a rezoning of industrial land for housing and mixed use, but the film industry has also played a role.
But really starting in 2015 with the emergence of film taking longer term space in Metro Vancouver, and then the growth of e-commerce starting in 2016 with Amazon and Winners and HomeSense and other key tenants taking large distribution centers in our market and really taking large blocks of industrial land supply out of the future supply. We've seen significant growth in rental rates.
He adds people are finding it hard to find a place to live, but employers are also having a tough time setting up shop, which could potentially alter the economic landscape of Metro Vancouver.
We're at about half of normal port cities in terms of industrial land supply. There's a lot of lost economic benefit we're losing in BC, and Alberta is definitely picking up a big portion of that.
The report recommends governments increase the protection and availability of industrial land and refocus planning to prioritize local housing, local food, and local production. It says industrial land contributes to more than 450,000 direct and indirect jobs and $50 billion in GDP. Yasmin Gandam, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here's a live shot of Cambie Street in Vancouver City Hall. Darius will have your BC-wide weather forecast as we head into another sunny weekend after this.
Welcome to Vancouver's newest campsite.
Hi there.
Hi there.
Comfortable?
Yeah.
Oh.
We got two of us. You want to wait? Hey, wakey. Yeah. This little tent is set at the doorstep of BC's largest tent. It first showed up on Monday, but was ordered out because there was a trade show going on at the stadium. The temporary home has all the amenities, a cooler of food and pop, bedding, and a stereo. Its occupants are waiting for tickets.
Rolling Stones.
It's Wednesday.
So, I missed the last one by 3 people. I ain't going to miss this one by 3 people. I'm here. And I'm staying until I get them.
Don, what if by some fluke you don't get any?
What if by some fluke you don't get any? Don't ask.
Right now, 2 other roommates are gone to shower, but when the ticket booth opens Saturday morning, these guys will be first in line.
By Saturday, the lineup will probably be down there by the end of those pylons.
You'll just be laughing at the people who are at that end.
No, I don't know. I'd be here for 2 days, 3 days. They'd be laughing at me, I think.
If the guys were members of a priority ticket club, they could have got their seats this morning.
We had people actually lined up 2 days ago.
How many tickets did you sell in it?
There was 800 or 900.
Well, right now I got row 2 on the floor.
Within an hour, a lot of those best seats in the house were already in the hands of brokers and selling for 4 times their original price.
I sold a couple to my friend Joe from Boston, and he wanted to take a girl to the concert, so
I paid $300 each for them. Row 5.
Once the concert is sold out, these tickets will be worth a lot more.
Maybe somebody might offer me $500.
What I really think they're going to sell for, I really think they're going to sell anywhere between $500 and $1,000.
At $300, it's a steal?
It's a steal. Somebody comes along, they're sold.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
yeah, so much for your big date.
Well, for $1,000, goodbye date. For $1,000.
Oh, no.
Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
Did you hear that, Vivian?
Hi, I'm Amy Bell. Here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. With the changes to how Canada is able to access journalism online and on social media, we want to assure you that when you're looking for CBC News, you'll always be able to find us. Wherever you are in BC, local news, breaking stories, and the latest from around the world is at your fingertips any time of the day with the free CBC News app and online at cbcnews.ca. Download the CBC News app and stay connected wherever you are.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Darius Madavi is here with our BC-wide weather forecast. Before we get to that, what now with the drought situation, Darius?
Unfortunately, it looks like we've gotten worse. Thursday is drought map day, and we've seen 4 basins move up a level. So Haida Gwaii has moved up a level. We've seen the north coast get a little bit worse, moving up to level 4, and then level 5 for the Fraser, the upper Fraser basins. And so we're not expecting to see that change very soon. We'll get a bit of rain for the coast, which we'll take a look at. But I wouldn't expect any major shifts as we head into next week because we're still looking relatively dry across the province. With that being said, we also have temperatures well above seasonal over the next few days for the southern interior and up into central BC. We're seeing temperatures anywhere from 5 to 7 degrees Celsius above where it would usually be this time of year. Those temperatures carrying into Saturday to kick off our weekend. And then by Sunday, they do come down a little bit as we have some marine air move in, especially on the coast, temperatures come down. But for the interior as well, we do see a bit of cloud moving through and temperatures coming down as a result. But that cloud not really coming with much precipitation. We're going to have a series of systems roll through, each one making its way a little bit further south. So right now we have a bit of rain in the northwest that's going to come down and affect parts of the central coast by tomorrow. And then as we head into the weekend, we get one more system roll through that looked like it would maybe make its way further south, but so far it's looking like it's just going to be affecting the North Island and further north, just on the coast. And then it's not until later that we see the potential for more systems to move in. But we can't use this model because it's too fine grained. We have to zoom out a little bit to see that, yes, we get more rain for the coast by Monday, and it's a chance that it makes its way into the interior. We're still quite a ways out, so this is not necessarily going to be accurate, but small chance for the lower mainland to get some rain, higher chance in the Fraser Valley as well. So a chance of getting some rain. In terms of smoke, we're looking okay tomorrow on the south coast. And for our BC-wide weather forecast, we've got a major clearing pattern as we see those high temperatures, that rain up and down the coast. And for the island, a little bit different if you're in the south or further north in terms of that cloud coverage. And here in Vancouver, we've got plenty of sun in the days ahead. And then just that small chance of rain overnight Sunday, but for the Sunday into Monday. But other than that, we're looking pretty clear across the province.
Okay. Thanks very much, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for Thursday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any hour, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That begins tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.